Welcome back to the Acceptance Project podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bryan Gross. Now let me set the scene for what you're about to hear, because today's episode isn't going to walk in quietly. It's going to roll in like weather you didn't see coming. Now, a few days ago, I sat down with my friend Yolanda Harrison-Pace. And by sat down with her, I mean I was sitting in my office on the West Coast and she was sitting in her office in Kentucky. But we've been friends for so long, it felt like we just picked up where we left off and just started catching up like old friends do. Now, Yolanda is a poet, a performer, a storyteller whose work doesn't just speak, it moves, like thunder rumbling across the sky. You don't just hear her, you feel her. She is a child advocate, educator, and humanitarian who has spent decades creating spaces where voices are not only heard, but honored. She's a visual artist, a dancer, and global messenger, and she's traveled across communities and cultures sharing work that reaches the mind, the body, and the spirit. And at her core, she is a woman of faith, grounded in purpose and living her calling out loud so others feel permission to do the same. Now, I'm going to give you a little warning. This isn't the kind of voice that tiptoes into a conversation. This is the kind that builds, rolls, and then suddenly you realize you're right in the middle of it. The title of one of her books is called Shout, Mammy, Shout. So now if that doesn't give you an idea that you're about to experience something similar to a tent revival, then just let me say, grab your tissues and maybe some of those butterscotch candies our grandmothers always kept in their purse, because today you're going to catch yourself laughing and crying and maybe a little of both at the same time. Because sometimes, as she says in her book, Mammy don't whisper, sometimes Mammy shouts. So I met Yolanda about 20 years ago at the Kentucky Writers Festival at Penn's Store, known for their infamous Penn's Privy. And for those of you who don't know what that is, well, it's an outhouse. I saw her not only take the stage, but man, she transformed it. She moved, she sang, she spoke, and somehow made the entire audience feel like they had been invited into something sacred and alive all at once. Yolanda is an international keynote speaker, performing arts specialist, storyteller, poet, author, or what I simply call a bridge builder through story, movement, and culture. For over 30 years, she has designed and facilitated programs in dance and performing arts, helping people find their voice, not just through words, but through movement, rhythm, and truth. She is the founder of Voices of Influence, Creating Encouragement. Her work explores identity, belonging, culture, and the deep human need to be seen and understood. And nowhere is that more powerful than in her book, Shout, Mammy, Shout. So with that said, sit back, grab a tissue, and get your hand fan ready, because we're about to have church. So Yolanda, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your wisdom, your laughter, and your enthusiasm for life with all the listeners and myself. Just seeing your face feels so wonderful. I know I wish listeners could see your face and that wonderful smile that you have that just lights up a room. So I would like for you to introduce yourself to all of our listeners so they can hear your voice and really appreciate what I have appreciated for so long. Thank you.
What a joy and honor to be here. I am Yolanda Harrison-Pace, and I'm all that he said I was, plus more and plus less. It just depends on what you needed, what time.
So tell the listeners about some of the projects that you've been doing. I know at one time, or maybe you still are, doing some work in Haiti and missionary trips and all that.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I'm still aligned with Haiti. And the special project I'm doing right now is the person who facilitates me and makes sure I'm safe and gets everything lined up that I'm going to be doing. He called me and asked me if I would read some medical lingo and medical books for the kids, because he's now teaching some of the Haitian students how to understand medical lingo in English. So that's the neatest thing I'm doing, is trying to read medical stuff in English so that other people can learn to understand how we act at the doctor's office.
Yeah. Well, if you need some help, my niece is about to graduate medical school, Mackenzie Baker. I'm sure she can help you if you need some help with that.
Well, I needed some help with pronunciation quite often.
Yeah, definitely. I can't pronounce half of those things. So the first question I want to ask you, rather. So you have lived your life sort of rooted in expression through poetry, movement, and storytelling. When you look back, what moment first told you, my voice isn't just mine, it's meant to be shared? Because you share your voice with the world. I mean, and the world who hasn't heard your voice, they're missing something. So, what was that moment that first told you, my voice needs to be shared?
I joined a church and it was in October. And the lady got up and she spoke and talked about how the mayor was going to do a huge proclamation here in Danville concerning domestic violence. And she said she had everything lined up except for one thing, and that was a person who would speak on behalf of victims of domestic violence. She said she couldn't find anybody who would do that. So when church was over, I kind of snuck up behind her and tapped her on the shoulder and said, I'll do it. She said, do what? I said, I'll speak on behalf of victims of domestic violence and the survivors. And of course, she responded as most people do, you? You? And that's what's so challenging about that particular devastation. The most unexpected woman or child or even man can fall prey to domestic violence. So I just told her, tell me when, where, and how long she wanted me to talk. And she did. And we became partners. And it got to where people would then come up to me and say, do you have a book? Have you written anything? How can we get a hold of you? That's when I realized, uh-oh, my voice is not mine anymore. And then when people start quoting me, that was the big giveaway. Oh, I remember when you said that's and such and such and such. And that changed my life. I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. My word is not mine anymore. And the big teller was this woman walks up to me and she says, I can drive now. And I'm like, okay. She said, I heard you speak, and you were speaking about power and control in the domestic violence arena. And she said, my husband never allowed me to learn how to drive because he said he would do all the driving for us. So she was stuck at home. And when she realized that was a power and control mechanism, she figured out a way to learn how to drive. And so when she saw me, and she was from up in the mountains, in the Appalachian Mountains, and she saw me someplace, 400 miles away from where I had spoken. When she said, I can drive now, based on what I had said.
Yeah, your voice, it moves people. I mean, I remember that very first time I saw you on that stage at the Kentucky Writers Festival. And honestly, I was there because I was so excited about seeing the author, David Dick. He was going to be reading from his book and presenting his book that day. And I was so excited. And then they introduced Yolanda Harrison-Pace, and this woman goes up on stage. And then all of a sudden, it's like I forgot where I was. I was so brought into the moment that you were in. It's amazing. And I have to share something with you and of course the listeners really quick. Years ago, I'm not sure if you remember this, but I had invited you to speak at the college I was teaching at, and it was during Black History Month, and you came there to speak, and as always, phenomenal job. Well, three of my aunts just so happened to come to the college on that day, and when I introduced you to them, you were like, "Oh my gosh, how wonderful to have aunties here." And I jokingly I said, "Oh, I've got so many aunts. You can have these three." And you were like, "Oh my god." And then you even announced to everyone, "Brian said I could have them. I have three aunts here." So, they talked about that for years. They loved you. They absolutely adored you. So,
The power of the word and the tradition I come out of, first thing I learned is that God used words to make things come about, the sky, the ocean, birds, sea creatures, and we're made in his image. So therefore, The word is very valuable and potent because we are cut from that cloth, if that's what you believe. Now, if you think you came from an explosion, boom.
Well, speaking of that, there's a difference between being heard and being understood. In your experience, what helps people move from one to the other?
It can be an education gap, it can be a language or vocabulary gap, or it can be a cultural gap. I watched my father be misunderstood because he was a city slicker, as they said, and he had retired way in the bottom in the country where my mother grew up, and they retired there. And he was hearing every time he tried to help or offer a change, he would hear, "This is always how it's been done, and we're not about to change." That is one way that people choose to be misunderstood because they don't want to change. People who are afraid of change will choose to misunderstand you. Then it can be a pain factor. They say that a woman will remain in the pain of an abusive relationship until the pain of leaving becomes less than the pain of remaining.
Hmm.
Then, if you are the pain agent, you have to become an expert at translating what you're hearing. For example, let's use a cat scenario. I know you're a dog lover and I'm a dog lover, but my mother loves cats. If you hear your cat going, you think it's hungry, so you set a bowl of food out and it won't go to the food. The that it was using was saying, "I want to go outside." So being misunderstood can come from both sides. I'm choosing to be misunderstood, or as the understander, we're not equipped to help the person. Then, if I'm just spouting off rhetoric out of ego, that can cause a misunderstanding. Why am I speaking? Why am I trying to help? Why is this person's voice not going where it needs to go? The tradition I come out of says that if you are spouting off stuff without love, then you're just a loud sounding gong. And believe you me, Bryan, I have been all over the world with people under the guise of philanthropy. All they're doing is being a loud sounding gong because their reason, their why is off key.
Mhm. So, our next question, you've spent years working with individuals who've experienced harm, silence, or even exclusion. What is the first shift you try to create in someone who has learned to hide their voice?
Trust. Sometimes people don't even know their voice is hidden. Some of the people I work with don't even know that they have a voice. They don't even know that they have a choice.
Mm.
They've never heard of win win. They only know power and control. They may come out of the tradition of children are to be seen and not heard. Now, when I'm working with people to help them find their voice, sometimes I encourage journaling. Now, my book that you referenced, Shout Mammy Shout, is a product of thousands of spiral notebooks. And it was how I discovered that I do have a voice. Because one of the first things that the perpetrator does is make you think, nobody thinks like that. Oh, that's stupid. Oh, that's dumb. So, uh, for a long time, I didn't know what my opinion was about anything, Bryan. In Shout Mammy Shout, I get to investigate, what do I think about September 11th? What do I really think about being Black in America?
Mhm.
What did I think about having a pen pal who was on death row? What do I think about mountains? What do I think about my ancestors? I actually got to pick cotton as a little girl, but I never talked about it, about my grandfather, about my grandmother.
Mhm.
Journaling helped me understand I have a voice and I have the right to use it, even if it's just in the journal. But as I talked about that domestic violence situation, my journals were what helped me to be able to speak to people and share. This happened to me. And people would say, "Oh, that happened to me. Why did it happen to you?" And when I would say, "Well, this," they were able to then evaluate their lives and their situation. And see, quite often I work with two kinds of women: those who are voiceless, those are the ones who never even knew they had a voice. Then I work with women who have been devoiced,
Mm.
women who were, conditioned to shut up or be quiet. You're not allowed to say that. No, no, no. They can't talk, they can't give their opinion. It happened to me. I got devoiced once I realized I had a voice. And I have the curse of the payday as an example. When women sometimes fall in love, they fall in love so deeply, they want to please that significant other. And that significant other may not have the woman's best interest at heart, or he might be into power and control. He doesn't understand what it means to be a husband. He doesn't understand what submission really means. He got to where I forgot my favorite candy, Bryan. My favorite candy was a Heath bar. His favorite candy was a payday. So for years, I never had a Heath bar. But we had paydays all in the house. So to this day, I can hardly stand a payday. And paydays are delicious. They're really very good, but it triggers me just to see the package.
Mm.
And I've worked with women who were voiceless and didn't even know what their favorite color was. We would do work with trying to maybe do a collage of things you like. And what we're doing, it was Christmas. And I said, we're going to do a collage. You're going to go through all these magazines and you're going to put on this big cardboard all the things that you wished your Christmas could be like. All the women went to town except for one. So I went over to her. She says, I, I don't know what kind of Christmas I like. I said, well, what's your favorite color to decorate in? She goes, I don't know. His favorite color was blue, so everything in the house was blue. So it's amazing when you try and help people who never knew they had a voice get their voice.
Well, I will say this for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to read Shout Mammy Shout, I can't I can't say enough about it. It is absolutely amazing. I absolutely love the just every passage that you wrote in it. So I'm so happy that was fortunate enough to meet you and to have a copy of that book. So thank you for that. So your work carries both strength and tenderness. Now, how do you create spaces where people feel safe enough to be vulnerable, to be strong enough to grow? Now, one of my favorite researchers is Brene Brown, and all of her work revolves around vulnerability. So, how do you create spaces where people feel safe enough to be vulnerable and still strong enough to grow?
Silence and the ministry of listening,
Mm.
finding out what people have in common, finding out their understanding of maybe some universal truths, shared like experiences. Then I had to learn as an agent of love and peace and giving back the voice or helping to find the voice. I, I had to learn. I'll say it this way: peppermint versus the rocking chair. To see a little child crying, we would dig in our purses. Oh, here's sugar, here, honey, and give them a peppermint. But I found if you take a child in your lap and rock it, that's a whole different other kind of helping and healing and honoring the vulnerability of a person. Now, let's take it to a grown up. So we find a woman who needs help. she's single parent momming and she needs food. It's one thing in my religiosity to say to her, "Oh, let me pray for you, my sister," versus the power of providing Pampers, peanut butter, personal hygiene items. This is how you truly help people. Now let's look at the growth metaphor. Are we planting seeds of encouragement or weeds of exclusion and seclusion and shame? The question also comes from me, whose rules are we abiding by? I was working at a food bank, and I was one of the founders of the food bank. You talk about the trust. People from miles around would come to be fed, and they trusted me to make sure they got fed and to treat them with dignity and humanity. Well, one day this lady comes up to me and says, Miss Pace, they won't feed me. I can't have any food. Now, I'm surrounded by food, Bryan. Cans and fresh food and all kinds of stuff. I said, why won't they feed you? I said, because they said they are limiting the scope of who they will serve. And they will only serve our county. And she was one county over. Now, I could really, if I wanted to, I could walk from my county to her county. But they told her we're no longer feeding people that come outside of our county. I said, go to your car. I'll be out there in a minute. I gathered some food and took it to her. And she said, I have a friend with me. She's from my county too. And the friend had a little boy. The little boy, all he had on, Bryan, was his BVDs. So I brought another big container of food for her friend, and we had a little bit of a clothing area. So I bought a couple of children's clothes out from my BVD baby. And then when they drove off, I kind of stood in the parking lot. Then I went to my car and I drove off and didn't go back because how in the world can you see somebody hungry? Tell them, oh, we don't serve you. Mm-hmm. And you got food surrounding you. So it's the ministry of listening, of paying attention, silencing myself so I can hear the screams, the silent screams of others.
Yeah. Well, I did a podcast not long ago, and I talked about the things that we have in common, and we have so much more in common than we have that separate us. But yet we want to focus on those things that separate us, like county lines, policies and procedures that say, oh, you can't. When really, if we just focus on the things that we have in common, we find that, my God, there's so much more to celebrate.
Yes. And so much more joy to be had.
And definitely a huge difference in someone's ability to listen and someone's ability to hear. Very different things. Your work reaches across generations, from children to adults. How does the need for acceptance and belonging, because at Bridging Success, we're all about acceptance of others, self-acceptance, and belonging. So how does the need for acceptance and belonging change as we grow older? Or maybe it doesn't.
I say that there is no age of acceptance or age of belonging. So that's like telling me, oh, when I was 3 and 8, I didn't belong, but now that I'm 22, I belong. Well, it's how am I going to function as a 22-year-old if all of a sudden I belong when I should have been being taught how to belong way back then? And maybe I would have something to contribute. I don't believe in a Thanksgiving table where there are, or we have, an adult table and a children's table. I think we should all be able to eat together. Mm-hmm. True Christianity, not religiosity, honors children from baby Moses to the little boy with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. Now, I do believe in the age of accountability, but not in the age of acceptance or of belonging.
Right. I feel like our need for acceptance is always there, whether it's a 5-year-old trying to find the courage to join a group at preschool, or whether it's the 85-year-old trying to find the courage to belong a group at a retirement home or senior center, that they both need that acceptance. And it's just finding the courage and finding that one person that pulls up a chair and says, "Hey, come sit with us. There's room at this table for you." And sometimes we want to protect those spaces and not allow anyone else in. But I love the saying that, rather than building walls, let's build bigger tables.
Ah, yes. Because it's really amazing that the person who also gets to accept, there's a whole energy and life to that too.
Hmm.
The fact that I accept you is just as powerful as you accepting me.
Absolutely. So you've traveled across cultures and communities, different countries. What have you learned about the universal need for dignity and compassion, regardless of where someone comes from?
Just always, I grew up with this poetic saying, and it's always cool to hear, oh, we all bleed red, or just walk a mile in my shoes, or her sandals, or her Air Force Ones, or her red bottom shoes, and you'll understand her. Uh, Not really. I have found that a 2-year-old child from Vietnam cries the same salty flavored tears as a 2-year-old child from Hawaii. A child from Ukraine laughs the same as a child from Ghana. A mother from Mexico grieves over her murdered baby the same as a mother from Brooklyn whose baby was killed in a drive by shooting. It's the same grief. A man from Alaska rejoices over catching a 12-pound fish, just like a man from Port au Prince, Haiti, will rejoice. Now, on the other hand, if you spit in the face of any of the people that I mentioned above, they're all going to feel the same sense of degradation. So we are more than just two people that bleed the same color blood. I am more than the journey you take in my shoes. It's my tears taste like your tears. My joy has the same dynamics as your joy. My sadness, my grief. There's so much, like you said, that we have in common that I don't understand why we focus on our differentness. Except they say power and control. They say, well, I'm afraid you might get something that I want. So I got to keep you different than me. I have to keep you uneducated. I have to do some language issues so you don't understand what's going on. I have to gatekeep to make sure I always am above you. I was doing a project as a docent, which is nothing but a tourist guide for those of you, because I didn't know. I'd heard the word, but I'd never gotten to be the word. I was doing a project and we had a bunch of homeschoolers there. And this particular exhibit dealt with people who were challenged differently than the people who were actually walking through. So there was this, for example, there was this one young lady who was an artist, and I don't remember what the word is for her issue. She couldn't feel things and she couldn't cry, but she could express in art her pain, whatever it was she was going through. And then there was another artist who, at one time, he was an African American guy. He had been homeless and had been given the opportunity to express himself on paper. And he did a lot of beautiful drawing and he became known and was able to inch his way out of homelessness because of his creative abilities. So, one of the young ladies who was in the audience, she says, you know something? I bet art could get rid of war. I said, oh, well, how do you mean? She said, if we took all of our leaders and put them in a room, our kings, our presidents, put them in a room with a bunch of art stuff, easels, paint, whatever, and with instruments, and tell them they have to work together and come up with a painting and come up with some music, and they've got to work together to do it. After they do that, they've got to go into a kitchen, all of them together. And in that kitchen's going to be all kinds of ingredients from all over the world. And they have to together cook a meal and serve one another.
Mm.
And I thought, oh my gosh, the dignity, compassion that possibly could be built if instead of having guns and swords and knives and things, if we put two different gangs in a room with some art equipment to say, create something together. Now, y'all go in there and cook something and serve one another. That's going to change how you look and feel and think about somebody. If you've had to not just go to a restaurant that's different than the food you normally eat, but you bring your food and you cook together and learn together, the world would be a different place.
I think if we could put all the leaders with our grandmothers in one room and say, "You're not coming out until the grandmothers say you okay, they've got their act together." There would be some who may be destined to serve a life sentence in that room. There's
Yes.
some grandmothers who would say, "You're not ready to come out yet. You're not playing
Oh,
fair. Get back in there."
oh, honey, honey. You're not ready. Get back in. And I fear that I might stay in longer than I would expect.
Me too, probably. Uh, okay, so there are moments when people feel silenced by fear, trauma, or even judgment. We've all have been there. What is one step someone can take today to begin reclaiming their voice?
I'm going to give you two.
Okay.
One would be find like minded and like hearted people to be around.
Mhm.
And that's difficult because, once again, I, when you are in that condition, often you're vulnerable. And there's something about gatekeepers and gaslighters that can sniff you out.
Mhm.
So if you can find a village, a carload, next door neighbor, a church full of like minded, like hearted people. And the other thing is, what helped me was volunteering. I didn't have a job when I was in different situations in my life, domestic violence. I gotten out. Now I don't have a job. Nobody will hire me. There are lots of little technical things like, oh, well, do you have transportation? Uh, well, where would they mail the check? Just things like that, technical, tiny things that keep you from getting a job. So I've started volunteering, and what's good about volunteering, if they don't treat you right, you just turn around and leave. It's like, well, you're not paying me well enough to take that. Oh, well, they're not paying me at all. Bye bye. See you. Wouldn't want to be ya. But say like you've always had a dream that you wanted to be a florist. Why not volunteer in a flower shop? What if I wanted to be a dentist? Go to a dental clinic and say, is there anything I can do? Can I empty the trash once a week? And be around the things that you truly love and want to be around. And every time I did that, Bryan, doors opened up for me.
Mhm.
Starting off, just volunteering where I would love to work, around people I would love to be.
Mhm.
So that worked for me. When I was grieving, volunteering to do something so I got outside of myself, then I was able to heal faster.
Yeah. I love that you said finding your village. I have been so fortunate. I've been so blessed throughout the course of my life to have the influence of so many amazing storytellers, starting with my family and, my mother, father, my grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, then leaving Kentucky and coming to California and meeting new people. And now here in the Seattle area where I live, just having found a village of people, and even people such as yourself, you're definitely part of my village that just I wanted to be a better I want to be a better storyteller, and I'm working on that. And just having surrounded myself with those people has given me the courage to start this podcast, to start learning how to be a better storyteller. The wonderful friends I have made at the National Speakers Association in Seattle. Some of them have been on the show, Melody on the podcast, Melody West, Rebecca Murray. Uh, they've all been so influential in my life. Melissa Reeves, Ron, he was a recent coach I had. They've all been amazing, and just surrounding myself with that village has helped me to find confidence in myself, and even finding my voice. So it's been amazing. So I mean, I think you're part of the village that helped, who's helping to raise me up. So, and I will say this: my father was one of those people as well, and it's just for him, I feel like, I used this line in a story that I told in Seattle, and so many people have told me since then. That line was so impactful, and it didn't seem like it just seemed like a line to me, that something like that I felt, but so many other people talked about how impactful it was. And that line was my father, who spent 25 years underground in the coal mines working. In my story, I said he stood in the dark for 25 years so I could stand in the light.
Mm.
And just he was an amazing man. He is, and I miss him every day. And this podcast is part of my therapy as well. But I'm so fortunate to have that village, and I think you're absolutely right. Just getting involved and just finding those people of like-minded individuals that just inspire you, because you inspire me and so
Oh,
many
you
others.
inspire me.
So in your storytelling and performances, you don't shy away from the truth. Sometimes the truth might hurt, but you don't shy away from it. How do you balance honesty with healing when sharing difficult experiences?
I don't shy away from the truth. What if I were to say it that in my storytelling and performances, I don't shy away from the lie? Balance honesty with healing. I think I'm more into figuring out how to balance the dishonesty with the sickness of things like racism, bigotry, bullying, domestic violence, alienation, sharing difficult experience versus hoarding ignorance.
Mm,
You see,
yeah.
sometimes, Brian, in order for me to sleep at night, and in order for me to inhale and exhale through the day, I've had to creatively and artistically call a lie a lie. Let me give you an example. One of my things that I do deals with identity. And one of the lies that we of the feminine persuasion often live is a G word, and that's girl. So I have a piece that I do when I'm dealing with identity, and it's called Please. And this is out of my book, Color Me Yolanda. Poems, poems, poems. Please stop calling me girl. Can I help you, girls? How are you girls today? Oh, us girls will be in the kitchen. Well, there's something missing. I don't mean to be rude, but have you turned on the lights and looked at me nude? I've got more pronounced changes and body rearranges than it takes to make a boy, if he can, into a man. How many children must I birth to be honored with womanly worth? So I am a woman, not girl. How many How many tampons does it take? How many turkeys must I bake? At the sight of one hair on his chest or chinny chin chin, a boy is instantly declared a man. What size bosom must I unfurl so I'm no longer decreed a girl? What must I knit, crochet, or sew before all will know with man I can stand as a woman, toe to toe? I'm woman, not girl. Someone please inform the world. Girls are considered playthings and like political toys for men who are allowed to outgrow their boy. A girl is to be owned and possessed, but a woman, darling, no contest. Pretty in pink, pretty in pearls, pretty in purple, but it makes me think. Why, oh, why, Bryan? Why can't I just be pretty in me?
Wow. That was amazing. I love that. Wow. I really hope that even though my niece is 25 years old, I think she's 25. Mackenzie, forgive me if I'm wrong on that, but um, I hope she hears that. I think you're so inspirational. I want every woman to hear your voice and to feel your power. So I think it's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
So, if someone is listening right now, and I'm certain they will be, if someone is listening and realizes they may have contributed to someone else feeling small or excluded, what would you say to them about stepping into accountability and change? Owning our mistakes sometimes are really hard, and we end up fighting harder to not own them than just to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. So, what would you do or say to someone to help them step into that accountability and change?
Swallow your pride. Go back humbly if you can. I don't mean by humbly skulking or being smaller than you are, but humble meaning be teachable or learnable. Go back to that brother or sister, that son or daughter, coworker, employee. Open up a channel of communication. Say I was wrong. I don't understand, or help me understand better. Or what would you have done differently? How did I make you feel? Oh, I'm so sorry because I don't like it when I feel like that. And if that's not possible, Bryan, vow to yourself to change your behavior. Deep dive into why do you have a necessity to make others appear small? What is it in you that can't have somebody be even Stephen with you or even grander than you? Evaluate the circumstance. What would have happened if you had responded differently and that person that you secluded had been included? Think about what would have happened. Then the $1 trillion question, Bryan, is what were you afraid of? You said, oh, boils down to fear. What were you afraid of? And if you can identify that fear, then we can get someplace.
Yeah. Okay. So, if you could give our listeners one message that helps them create more acceptance, more connection, and less harm in their own communities, what would you want them to carry forward after today's conversation?
I thought about that a lot, and I wrote this especially for you.
Oh, thank you.
When it comes down to the nitty gritty, the brass knuckles, and beauty depending on the eye of the beholder, and when it comes down to the kissing of grits, rising and shining, did you feed somebody today? Evil has such a precise, well thought out, one track mindness. Why doesn't kindness. You see, we are no longer the man in the mirror. We are the person in the selfie. That's what I wrote just for you.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I have enjoyed this conversation. If anyone has an opportunity to come and hear you or to just be in your presence and get a copy of your book, it's life changing. That's all I can say. So, do you have any upcoming events or anything performances? I mean, are you still involved with the Writers Festival, or is that still going on? I don't know. I've been gone for several years now.
Well, it has changed tremendously because the people who were over it have passed away. So that always brings about major change. But they still try and do some sort of Kentucky Writers Day. It may be in at the library or someplace else. I have a cool project I've been doing uh since the pandemic.
Oh,
I was stuck at home by myself, and I happen to own some puppets. I'm not a pup. I cannot do ventriloquism. Maybe I could now call myself a puppeteer, but I was somewhere and somebody came up to me and said, "Oh, I know you. We're friends on the internet." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "What are you doing here?" And they were opening up a radio station in that area where I was. And they said, "We're looking for volunteers." That's why I'm here trying to find volunteers. I said, "Well, what kind of volunteers?" I said, "Well, we're looking for people to read commercial scripts and things like that. But and it's all volunteer. And we're looking for people who want to do a show, a radio show." And I don't know what you call yours, but God said, "Tell him you want to do a radio show." Somebody moved my mouth and I said, I want to do a radio show. And they asked what kind. And I said, "Okay, God, you started this." He said, "Tell them you want to read on the radio." I said, "I want to show reading on the radio to families, to children." They said, "Well, there are lots of podcasts doing that, but nobody is reading on the radio." I said, "Well, I will." So I have a show called Reading Rockstar where I read to children and families on the radio, and I've been doing it since the pandemic.
wow.
So I've
And
read
what's that
hundreds and
station?
hundreds of books.
What's the station where someone could listen to that?
It's WLXU. It is called Media Lex, 93.9 LPFM. Uh, I don't know how far it goes, but they're doing a trial thing with me, and they actually have put my show, the audio, on YouTube.
Oh,
So if you go into Media Lex and look under Reading Rockstar, and it's going to be with Yolanda and Corona. That's the particular puppet that I read to. She can't read. Before the pandemic, she was nicknamed, or her name was Baby. She decided to change her name to Corona because she wanted to make something positive out of everything that was going on, the virus. But she said, "But I want to spell it with four R's." So she spells her name Corrrrrrona. Corona. And what's so cool about it? We can talk about on a child level and family level about some of the same things that you were asking me questions about.
mhm.
Inclusion, when you don't feel safe. I read books, about anything and everything.
Hmm. Well, let me do a plug for my own book. I have
Yes,
a children's
please.
book coming out, hopefully within the next month, hopefully, and it's called Charlie's Choices. So maybe you can get a copy of that and read that on your radio program.
Oh, I would love to. I would be honored.
I will send you a copy autographed from me to you, since all of mine are autographed from you to me. I will send you an autographed copy, and you can read on the radio.
So I'm doing the hooray fingertips clapping.
For those of you who can only hear, not see what she's doing, I'm getting the sort of the snaps. So
Yeah. Love you.
I love you as well. Thank you so much. This has been phenomenal. Wow. What did I tell you? Wasn't that amazing? And just hearing her voice doesn't do it justice, but it gives you a sneak peek into who she is. I encourage you to look her up on Facebook, send her a message, and let her know you heard her podcast. Yolanda has a way of telling the truth that makes you stop and think. Not because she's trying to convince you of anything, but because she reminds you of things you already knew deep down and maybe you forgot along the way. What I love most is that conversation wasn't really about speaking. It was about being seen. It was about belonging. It was about having the courage to show up as yourself and creating space for others to do the same. Our conversation continued long after the tape stopped rolling in the studio, and we laughed and shared like we always have done. So, as you go about your week, I hope you'll pay attention to the people around you. Who needs encouragement? Who needs to know they're welcome? And maybe they need someone to listen before they speak. Because, like I've said 100 times here at Bridging Success, acceptance isn't just something we believe, it's something we practice. And sometimes the smallest act of kindness or the smallest word of encouragement can change the direction of someone's day and maybe even their life. And if this conversation stirred something in you, well, don't ignore it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. You probably already know who that is. And I would love to hear from you also. So feel free to reach out at brian@bridgingsuccess.com and let me know what stayed with you. And just remember, your voice matters, not someday, not when it's perfect, but right now. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of those around you. The Acceptance Project podcast is a production of Bridging Success, LLC. To learn more about the podcast and our work, please visit bridgingsuccess.com. This podcast and its contents are for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. I'm Dr. Bryan Gross, but I'm not a licensed therapist. The topics and opinions shared by me and any guests are our own and should not replace professional or medical advice. If you're seeking mental health support, medical guidance, or help with personal matters, please reach out to a licensed professional who can provide the individual support you need.